And it is now 9:31 and I see Chris is on the screen. So at this point, I think I'm going to go ahead and look at the agenda. First of all, we're on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, coming live from my bedroom. So good morning, everybody. First of all, before we proceed, I'll just get Chris to do a quick roll call to see who's with us today.
Very good, Chair. Councillor Luloff.
Present.
Councillor Dudas.
I'm here.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Deans.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Councillor Fleury. Not yet. Councillor Menard.
Morning.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor DeRuse.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Vice Chair Leeper.
Here.
You have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. And first of all, just before we start today, at this point, I'd like to inform my colleagues that we'll have a brief ceremonial presentation. I wish it could be in person, but as you know, we're in Zoom land. I'll be taking the opportunity to announce the winners of the annual Bruce Timmermans Cycling Awards. So since 1999, the city has been recognizing the contributions of individuals and organizations committed to cycling within the community. So first off, it's just a couple of days ago, in a couple of days, we'll be launching Let's Bike Month for the month of June in the city of Ottawa. It's a time to celebrate Ottawa's cycling community and encourage people to try cycling as a fun, healthy transportation option. I even got to get out on my Purple Beast this weekend and have a bit of fun. This is also a good time to honor those who have helped us achieve those goals in setting out the 2013 Transportation Master Plan of increasing cycling modal share. As in the past years, we'd like to recognize the efforts for their contributions to the Ottawa cycling community through the Bruce Timmerman Award. This award program was created by the City of Ottawa to recognize the individuals and promoting the benefits of cycling. The awards are named after Bruce Timmermans, who is a longtime cycling educator and advocate and active member of the Ottawa Bicycle Club and founding member of the Citizens for Safe Cycling. We recognize his outstanding contributions to the Ottawa cycling community through the awards we are presenting here today. Also joining us this morning is Michael Timmermans, a nephew of Bruce Timmermans. Thank you for joining us today. This morning, we are presenting one individual and one organizational award. I've invited the recipients to come to today's meeting for us to acknowledge their hard work in the cycling community. Our first award winner is Dr. Eugene Waters. Dr. Eugene Waters is a fierce advocate for cycling for transportation and leads by example, cycling year-round to her hospital medicine practice at the Ottawa Hospital. She has shared her love and tips for winter biking and winter cycling guides published by the hospital and introducing a fellow winter biker user article in the Manor Park Chronicle. Eugenie also is an advocate for biking as a component of the climate action, including through her work organized Mums for Healthy Recovery. She has spoken at Ottawa Council and committee meetings in support of cycling, sustainable transportation, and climate action, as she is an active promoting the benefits of cycling on social media. This year, Bruce Timmermans Organization Award goes to Bike Ottawa for the Bike Ottawa Initiative map, the interactive map. First launched in 2018 and available for free to the public, the Bike Ottawa interactive map has been a vital tool for new cyclists to find comfortable routes to ride and experienced cyclists to find new ways to get to places. The map covers a wide range of topics, including route planning based on the comfort level of a cyclist, knowing your bike paths are clear during winter, knowing where the nearest bike racks, bathrooms, ice cream shops, or bike repair stands are within the map, interested visual data of desired paths and traffic collisions. And these maps have helped people across Ottawa become break down some of the barriers that traditionally keep people away from cycling. Please help me congratulate Eugenie and Bike Ottawa on their hard work and dedication for growing Ottawa cycling within our communities.
Way to go, Eugenie.
Forgive me, my papers are all over the place here. But at this point, I do see some wonderful people on the screen. So at this point, I will ask, and maybe Chris can please help if they're not already in the room, if we can have Dr. Eugenie Waters, please say a couple of words.
Chair, I've looked to see if she has joined, and unfortunately I don't see her. She had a busy schedule, and she said she'd try to make it if she could. She may not be able to at the moment.
Absolutely and completely understandable, but I do see another face that's we're very familiar with. We have Aaron Cunningham from Bike Ottawa. Aaron.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the award. You know, this the bike maps has been such an amazing journey for our organization. So, you know, I think it's really stands out as a great example of the power of volunteers to change something. And I want to thank, you know, just a handful of the people that really were critical to the success of this. Is Rob McRae, who was hoping to log in. I don't know if he was able to. His power is still out, day 9, unfortunately. Yarrow Skorets, also our past president, Heather Shear, Sean Getler from our board of directors, who all put so much energy into making this happen. And, you know, it's had such an amazing impact. It's a very popular thing. We keep having to pay for more internet bandwidth for people to access it. So we know that it's getting used, and we hear the good news stories about people being able to find their way around the city where they weren't sure they were going to be able to before. And we also hear from organizations as far away as Italy and Germany and places like that that have seen it and are trying to build off the platform. Hopefully in the next wave, we can build off of the work that's happening in Waterloo and put it into an app so that, you know, it's that much easier for people to use the infrastructure that we've built in this city in the last decade. You know, which makes me hopeful, right? It tells me that there's a demand for cycling. But what it also tells me is that you know, what I ultimately hope to see is that, you know, that something like this, though, actually becomes less necessary. One of the things I'm really glad to see happening in the next transportation master plan is the idea that, you know, you can just bike anywhere in the city, you know, that you can drive, and you can do so comfortably. So I hope that in some way this is you know, helped push in that direction, so that, you know, the city's recognizing the demand that's there for cycling, and you know, how much demand there is in the city and how easy it is to actually get around our city if you've got good wayfinding. So I'd like to thank all the volunteers who've made this happen, and I'd like to thank the city for giving us this award.
Very, very well said, Aaron. Thank you very much. And yeah, definitely we can clap for that. But I'm also clapping because Chris has just informed me Dr. Eugenie Waters is joined as a panelist now. And are we able to bring the good doctor into the room, Chris?
She has the floor if she would care to unmute herself and or accept the prompt to be, I think she has to accept the prompt because she's a panelist. So she just has to unmute herself.
And while we're waiting for that, waiting for that prompt to take place, I have to mention the fact the winners are going to receive a certificate and a one-of-a-kind award. This is kind of cool, actually. These unique awards are made from bike parts that have been created by Jason Commandat, a local bike shop owner who brings art into work every day. So apparently these awards look pretty funky, and I look forward to seeing what they look like before they get passed out, but kind of a cool fun fact. And while we wait for Dr. Eugenie Waters, maybe at this time we'll get Michael Timmermans to say a couple of quick words about the wonderful legacy and how you're continuing to lend your family's name to cycling within the city.
Good morning. Thanks to the chair and to the Transportation Committee for handing out this award. And continuing to keep Uncle Bruce's legacy alive and well in this city. I think if he was, well, I know if he was still around, he'd be really, really proud to see the strides that have taken place in this city over the past 20 odd years in terms of improving cycling and active transportation. So on behalf of the Timmermans family and my late Uncle Bruce, I know this is always something that the family looks forward to every year. So I'm honored to continue the tradition, and thanks again, and congratulations to this year's winners. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. And perfect timing. Dr. Eugenie Waters just connected her audio. If you wish to unmute yourself, the floor is yours, and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Sorry for a few technical difficulties here. I'm just in the middle of my work day, but thank you so much for the honor of this award. I was very surprised and really appreciate the nomination and being given the award. And I'm sorry I missed what was part of what was said just before I was able to get on here. But I really just want to thank some people in Ottawa who have really made it possible for me to become a more regular cycling commuter and use biking as a form of transportation. So that's a number of community friends and members of Bike Ottawa and Enviro Centre who have really sort of nudged me or given me advice or just been good friends as I sort of navigated how to do that. And I think that's one of the things that is a dream for me for Ottawa is that right now you do need those friends or that kind of informal information to figure out how to navigate biking to where you need to go in the city, and you need advice and tips and inside information essentially to know how to be safe and how to find a safe route and how to avoid certain challenges and just to understand that there's going to be barriers because of the fact that we're just not there yet for the infrastructure for safe cycling in Ottawa. And I know there's been a lot of changes over the last few years, and that's encouraging. And I really appreciate all the people who have kind of made it possible for me to do the level of cycling that I'm doing by advocating for safe infrastructure to the degree that it's there now. And so, I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I want them to be able to bike wherever they want and know that they're going to be safe, and I don't need to have my heart in my chest every time I'm riding with them or when they're old enough to ride on their own. And so that's those are things that I really hope for. And being in healthcare, cycling offers so many important health benefits. And those are, physical health, mental health, in terms of equity, allowing people to get around in different ways. For, various people with disability, having safe separated bike lanes is actually like a huge tool for mobility. And so I think it's really important. And then just taking in context the storm that we've had, I actually am one of the residents who's still without power at home. And, on day 8 or 9 now, and having a really good, secure network of separated biking infrastructure is part of resiliency for climate change. And having cycling transportation that's safe and comfortable and accessible for everyone is really one of the best and least expensive tools we have to fight climate change. So I just really thank the city for all the progress that's been made so far, and really look forward to kind of really brisk acceleration of biking infrastructure for the city. And I just wanted to thank everyone for this award. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And congratulations again. Great work. You'll get a cool certificate, but also some kind of funky award that goes along with this in the next couple of days. And again, thank you for your advocacy. At this point, I'll go back to the more boring part of the meeting, and I'll let you guys free unless you want to hang around for a couple hours. But we're going to go back to our agenda. And if we look at the agenda real briefly here, first of all, we have no declarations of interest. Confirmation of the minutes, minutes 29 Wednesday, the 4th of May, 2022. Are those confirmed?
Confirmed.
Thank you very much. We have a response to inquiry. Going down the list, item number 1 within the agenda, it's the Ottawa Hospital connection between Dow's Lake Station environmental assessment study. We have no staff presentations, no delegations registered, and no correspondence. I do believe Councillor Menard has two motions that he's been working with staff. Thank you for doing that, Sean. If we want to do, if we're good with this, we'll introduce the 2 motions. If there's no need to hold this item, is that the will of the committee? We'll just go ahead, look at the 2 motions. If we're in agreement, we'll carry this item within the agenda and continue through the agenda. Does that make sense to everyone here, or did somebody?
I do have questions for staff.
So we'll hold the item on the agenda, and so item number 1 is held. Item number 2 is a Bank Street active transportation and transit operations feasibility study. This is a very Menard heavy agenda today, Sean. This is like the Menard show. This is great. Okay, so we actually do have a delegation, and forgive me, Chris, I do believe the delegation does wish to speak today.
I would assume so, Chair. I don't know that for a fact, but perhaps we can ask Mr. Burke.
I believe that was his intent. Patrick Burke, ahead of the BIA, we've talked as well, but I think he did want to address the committee chair if he is
Okay,
here.
great. So we'll hold that item. So item number 2 is also, oh, hi, Patrick, how are you?
Hi, good. Sorry for
so
the delay, just joining here.
No worries at all. So just typically how it works is during agenda clearing, we ask the delegations if they're in favor of what's in front of us and they just want to carry the item on the agenda. Terrific. If they wish to actually have the item held because they might be in opposition or have some comments, we certainly do that as well. So I'm just asking you, if we were to carry this item, are you satisfied, or did you feel the need to speak today?
I was hoping to speak quickly, though not in opposition.
With the willing of, does anybody on the committee want this held? Because if that's the case, maybe we'll award Mr. Burke the opportunity to say a couple of quick words, and then we can carry the item and continue through the rest of the agenda. I see a lot of nodding of heads, and the vice chair too. Good. Mr. Burke, please go ahead. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate the chance to speak today, and thanks for your time. And thank you to Councillor Menard and his staff for letting us know this was coming. So reading through it, I guess there are 4 points that we like to address, recognizing that this is super early in the process. And one is that, consultation will be important for us, and the boundaries of the study area are pretty much identical to the boundaries of our BIA. So it will have an impact. We're at the scoping stage, so if there's a pilot that's proposed and moves forward, it will be impactful. But I really want to acknowledge that consultation is a key theme throughout the report that you're looking at. It states that early and frequent engagement with stakeholders will be required. It names the GLEAP BIA as a key consultation partner. And so that's really great to see. I do want to note that initially the report named the Bank Street BIA, but I clarified with staff that it was meant to be the GLEAP BIA. So glad to see that in there, and thank you to staff for their attention. We do have sort of one ask for consideration, and that's that an economic impact study be a project deliverable. The reason being that the importance of local business to our community has been evident, especially over the past 2 years in there. Still managing with the impacts of the pandemic and some other continuing pressures like inflation and supply chain issues, and the old issues that we used to talk about before the pandemic, competition with big box stores and internet giants. So it's a tough battle out there, and if it's possible to do a bit of work before a pilot is introduced, just to evaluate what the economic context is going to be, that would be much appreciated. The next point probably won't be a surprise. I think the economic impact of removing Bank Street parking would be a concern for many of our members. This is probably not specific to the GLEAP. I think Main Streeters everywhere have some of those reservations, but I do want to make the point that we're an important destination, and multimodal access to the area is really, really important. So a good pedestrian network. We have a lot of local supporters as well as people who want to spend the day here. We've got regular bus service, although I know reliability is a concern that's mentioned. 8 kilometers of bike lanes through the neighborhood and along the canal. And we're working with the city to improve access to bike parking along Bank Street. Those are all really key issues. The thing that comes up most often is the importance of street side parking. And I think it's because our members hear about it from their customers really often. In 2016, we did a study through Environics, asked lots of questions about the glebe. One of the questions was, what would you improve? Accessibility was a key theme, broadly speaking. And among the accessibility, access to parking was a key concern. 35% of respondents asking for more access to parking. So I have heard concerns from members about what that would mean. Again, recognizing we're early on, but we hope that the consultation process, which seems extensive based on the report, will allow us to address some of these issues. And then finally, there are some issues that may need or that could use consideration that would fall outside of the study area. The NCC's summer program to open up the QED to active transportation, but also restrict auto traffic will have an impact on the area and probably on the pilot project. And then, through this project or maybe the TMP possibility of increased cycling network connections east to west between the Flora Footbridge and the incoming Dow's Lake LRT station and the Trillium Path. So anyways, I wanted to thank staff for this report, thank councillors for the time, thank Councillor Menard again for the heads up, and appreciate the reference to consultation here.
No.
We can hear you, Tim, just not the picture. Oh, there you go.
Oh, great. Sorry. Forgive me. I just lost my power. Go figure. So I'm on my phone now. Right in the middle of the meeting. All right. So Sean, you had your hand up there?
Yeah, thanks so much, Chair. And just very quickly, just wanted to thank Patrick and all his work on the BIA in this area. I know everyone's been through a lot the last 2.5 years, and Patrick, you nailed it with what this is meant to do. You asked us to make sure that there will be full consultation with stakeholders. That's the nice thing about this, is there's no approvals in this. It is setting out the fact that there'll be stakeholder consultation prior to any approvals or funding spent or anything like that, which is the way the process should work. Absolutely agree with you about an economic impact analysis to be done as part of that, including parking, the 2nd Avenue garage, the parking on the street. This is critical. Is what are the economic outputs that would be existing here with any changes? And I think it makes total sense to include previous studies that you did a few years ago, to be considered. So in complete agreement with you, and just appreciate the collaboration on as we move forward with the city and what we're trying to accomplish here in terms of our modal share goals. So thank you for being a good stakeholder, and we'll definitely I think follow through on the items you've mentioned that give consideration for the committee today. So appreciate you attending today.
Thanks, Councillor. I appreciate it.
So thank you, everybody, and thanks for the time today, Patrick. So on this item, is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you. And Chris, you're going to have to help me out here, buddy, because I didn't want to kill a tree and print off the agenda, and I have no power, and I'm working on my phone. So the next item on the agenda.
Barrhaven Light Rail Transit.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So that one, I believe there is a presentation, and we do delegations that wish to speak. So we'll hold that item. Mr. Vice Chair, what is item number 4? I think it's all-way traffic calming thing.
Capital Ward speed reductions.
Wonderful. So there's no delegation.
Can we hold that one? I just have a question.
On that one? Okay, sure. Held. Item number 5.
Status update, Transportation Committee increase in motions for the period ending May 18th.
Again, no delegations, no speakers. Does anyone want this item held, or is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Back to Barrhaven Light Rail Transit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So at this time, I'll turn the floor over to staff to go ahead and fire up there. I believe they have a presentation for us today.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I have with me Frank McKinney. He's going to give us a presentation and let us know if there's any questions afterwards.
Okay, Chris, will we see the presentation? Here we go. Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, Chair and Transportation Committee members. I'm here today to brief you on the work that we have done as directed by Council to examine the options to mitigate the project impacts on tenants. Next slide, please. Council approved the Barrhaven LRT environmental assessment study in November of 2020. This 10-kilometer project includes a pinch point between Knoxdale Road and Hunt Club Road, where residential units are built to the edge of Woodruff Avenue on the west side of the road, as you can see in this photo. The approved functional design required a 20-meter strip of land on the west side, which would affect 100 rental units of approximately 180 that make up Manor Village and Cheryl Gardens. Due to the concerns of loss of housing stock, particularly the low rent units such as these, Council directed staff to establish a working group to look at options to mitigate the impact on tenants facing permanent displacement. Next slide, please. Chaired by Councillor Eglai, the working group met on 4 occasions over the last year and a half. City provided tenant members with resources, such as how to get on the wait list for low-cost housing. Staff also investigated alternative sites for potential community housing development, but found no suitable sites in the surrounding area. The tenants were further provided with assurance that the city would take no action related to the expropriation of these properties for at least 5 years, given that no funding for the LRT implementation has been secured, and once the funding is in place, several years of lead-up time is needed to develop the design and undertake the procurement process and evaluation. Next slide, please. Since 2020, there have been other changes that affect the LRT project. Of note is the real estate prices that have increased substantially and continue to do so. This was unforeseen when the EA project cost was developed. The timing of the LRT implementation is still unknown, and as time passes, property acquisition costs will continue to climb. The cost to the city to acquire property is not just the market value, but expenses could also include injurious affection, which was not accounted for in the EA estimate. Furthermore, council has also declared a housing emergency. Staff considered these factors and decided it was prudent to revisit the LRT corridor as an option to mitigate impacts on tenants and housing stock, while also reducing the project budget risk. Next slide, please. The 2020 EA study examined several options in this pinch point area, as depicted here. To summarize, options that were investigated were cut and cover, open trench, elevated, and whether the corridor would be in the median, east or west of Woodruff right-of-way. Details of each option were discussed in November 2020, and Council approved the elevated LRT option located west and beyond the roadway right-of-way, which is the blue line on this map, the lower blue line. Next slide, please. Looking back at the original median option, it had its distinct benefits of avoiding residential displacement and is located within the city-owned property. However, there are technical and operating disadvantages to this option, and as such, it was not recommended. These issues are back-to-back curves that would create steel-on-steel noise and increase maintenance costs. There are major underground utilities such as a 1,200 millimeter water main serving Barrhaven. There would be impacts to traffic and transit during and post-construction. Sight lines at intersections were an issue to address. And overall, the construction is more complicated and could last longer and has a higher construction cost. Next slide, please. Over the last several months, the study team developed a new median alignment option that would have mitigated most of the key constraints of the original median option. While there are still trade-offs, mostly technical rather than social, they can be managed with careful design and appropriate construction procedures. This new median alignment provides more gentle horizontal curves, which helps reduce the noise impact and provides for a better ride for transit customers than the sharp curves of the original median option. However, having these gentler curves results in the shifting of the station further north of the intersection at Knoxdale, creating a greater walking distance to the station for those accessing and transferring to the LRT. Through design consideration of sight lines and traffic impacts will be needed to be addressed and mitigated. Careful work around major underground utilities to mitigate service disruption is a must. So this will be a more complicated project to construct in this area. Next slide, please. This image shows a conceptual cross-section looking south along Woodruff Avenue between Knoxdale Road and Hunt Club Road. LRT will replace most buses in Woodruff corridor, with the exception of some local routes which serve communities to the east and west. The space currently used by the dedicated curb bus lanes will be reallocated to support the elevated LRT alignment, including median and support piers. 2 general purpose lanes per direction will be maintained, plus turning lanes. Next slide, please. Shifting the LRT alignment gently into and out of Woodruff Avenue median changes the horizontal and vertical alignment of the LRT and influences the location of Knoxdale Station. The station is no longer close to the intersection, as you can see here. However, during the design phase of the projects, efforts will be made to mitigate the increased walking distance as much as possible. You will also note in this image that there will be a new protected intersection at Woodruff, Knoxdale, Medhurst. Next slide, please. These photos are samples of guideways, elevated corridors over existing roadways. From a design perspective, the presence of the LRT guideway within the road right-of-way impacts sight lines and requires safety measures to protect piers located in the median and boulevards, such as guide rails and concrete barriers. The intersection and traffic signal designs must consider the impact of the guideway has on sight lines and will have to comply with OTM Book 12 guidance, the regulatory requirements of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, and AODA requirements. A review of median brakes and turn storage capacity will be necessary. Construction of the elevated median LRT alignment from baseline to Nepean Sportsplex is estimated to occur over 3 years. During this time, Woodruff Avenue between Knoxdale Road and West Hunt Club will need to be reduced from 3 lanes in each direction to 4 lanes per direction, with adjustment to turning lane storage also required. 1 lane per direction could be dedicated to transit to maintain the role and function of this segment of Woodruff Avenue as a rapid transit corridor and maintain transit reliability during construction. Existing active transportation facilities will be maintained. Next slide, please. This image shows that around Hunt Club, the LRT transitions from the median back to the corridor that has been on the west side south of Hunt Club. The desired curve radii at the transitions into and out of the Woodruff Avenue right-of-way result in significantly increased span lengths to avoid the southbound lanes of Woodruff Avenue. With major construction going on in this area, there is an opportunity to add another protected intersection, as you can see here. Next slide, please. We are getting near the end, and this is a summary of our work to date. The new median option is technically feasible with more complex design and construction. Compared to the original median option, it improves the operational noise and rider comfort. Further reduction of walking distance to the new Docksdale station will be investigated during detailed design. The new median alignment provides an opportunity to coordinate upgrades to underground utilities during construction. This option leaves residential lands intact as it is on city property. And this option no longer creates housing displacement. While there will be less property acquisition expense, the new alignment has a higher construction estimate of about 35 to 50 million compared to that EA approved alignment. However, since real estate values are so volatile, and in hindsight, the EA project estimate may have been light on the property values and injurious affection, this less than 1.5% overall project increase may be a wash at the end of the day. Next slide, please. So upon approval of Transportation Committee and Council of this report, we will proceed with completing the environmental impact assessment of the new median option, consult with the public and agencies, inform Transportation Committee of the consultation results, and finalizing the transit project assessment process to incorporate the new corridor recommendation. Next slide, please. This concludes the presentation. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. I do believe we do have a couple of delegations that wish to speak today, and I'll be looking for my vice chair to lend a little assistance again, if you could. Or maybe Chris, if you're there, if you could let us know who the first delegate is.
The first delegation chair would be Ursula Malins.
Oh, Ursula, great. Ursula is no stranger to this environment. So Ursula, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Just clicking all the buttons to join. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I am the solicitor for the owners of Manor Village. So these are the lands that are located south of Woodruff and Knoxdale. And so this is one of the properties that was going to be most impacted by the previous alignment. So my client owns 5.74 acres, currently containing 6 townhouses, 6 apartment buildings. And at the time in 2020, there were approximately 111 rental units. We do thank the city, we thank staff for reconsidering the alignment. We do agree with and support the recommendation of the revised alignment, because this will permit the lands to continue to be used for rental stock, in addition to future potential for increasing rental stock in the area. I just need to touch on a few points quickly in terms of the chronology. So back when the LRT Phase 3 report was first presented, that was November 2020. The city then passed an interim control bylaw in October of 2020. And then the city initiated a rezoning of my client's lands, the lands on the west side of Woodruff, in order to protect the lands for the alignment that was identified. We also had the new official plan coming in November of 2021. So my client, throughout the process, we did provide comments expressing our concerns with the identified alignment because of the impact it was going to have on the lands. Up to 2/3 of my client's lands were going to be required for that alignment. Since then, my client has undertaken extensive renovations on the lands to the rental units. They have had to do many structural changes, new roofs, electrical, many changes were required. In addition to, they've added some new bedrooms to some of the units, and they've even created a few units in the existing structures since then. This has had the positive benefit of providing more rental stock in the area. A key detail is that all required processes have been followed, whether it's building permits, dealing with tenants. There have been many discussions with the existing tenants. Generous relocation packages have been provided. Financial assistance has been provided to help tenants who had to be displaced as part of the renovations. But again, what's happened at the end of the day is this is remaining a rental stock. New rental stock has been provided. So I did provide a letter on Friday where there were 3 sort of action items coming out of this, but I reminded myself there's actually a 4th one we need to request today. Again, we thank staff for this revised alignment, which we fully support based on the details we know at this time. We would like to be part of the working group going forward in terms of functional design, just in terms of tweaking it as it does still abut or is adjacent to my client's lands. But the follow through required is with this new alignment is that we request that the city terminate proceeding with its own rezoning application for the 20 meters of my client's lands that was being rezoned in order to protect it from redevelopment potential because it was required for the alignment, which is now not required. And then the 4th, which was not in my letter, but it occurred to me this morning, is the fact that we also need to make a submission to the province in regards to the city's new official plan, draft official plan, because my recollection is that there was policies or even the alignment identified was as recommended in 2020, which is not what's being recommended now. So those are my submissions. We do thank the city staff for reconsidering the alignment, and we do support it. So subject to any questions you may have, those are my submissions.
Great. Thank you very much for coming out to speak today. I'm looking at my mobile phone. Oh, Councillor Fleury has a question for you. Councillor Fleury.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Ursula. Question for you. So, which municipal addresses is the property owner responsible for, and who is the property owner?
The property owner is Forum SLP Manor Village, and the addresses are 5 and 7, 9 and 11 Majestic Drive, in addition to 1664 and 1668 Woodruff Avenue.
Okay. And then you've made a number of references towards investments. We've seen a recent article of tenants who feel they are being renovated out of the space. And I wonder if you can clarify if that is the case from your perspective, or what's the situation there, because it seems a bit at odds with some of the goals we would have. We're realigning to keep tenants in their homes, and then the property owner seems to have development interest here. So I'm curious to hear from you on that front.
So, I mean, my client has, as I said, they have certainly followed the processes as required. It was always their intention when they purchased the property in September of 2020 to improve the property. When it was purchased, it was very out of date. And as I said, they have had to do substantial renovations, including everything from new electrical, new HVAC, new roofs, what have you, in order to provide improvements, more livable units. There have been many tenants who have left through the process, and many satisfied tenants. my client has provided very generous relocation packages. I mean, the statutory, the Residential Tenancy Act, what have you, those processes do determine what the minimums are. Some instances, tenants have been provided rent at other locations for up to 2 years, depending on how long their tenancy at this location was. My client continues to work with the existing tenants. They are committed to working with the existing tenants in order to help everybody find either alternative accommodation or even being able to return to this site at the market rents once renovated.
When you're saying renovations, is there expansion of these properties?
Within the existing built form, there has not been an increase to the existing built form. However, some of the units might have been reconfigured to add an additional bedroom. There was some units added in what was basement space that wasn't being utilized, what have you. There is the potential for future construction on some of the lands. There's expensive parking lots or what have you that could in the future be the site of new development. And of course, that would follow the city processes at that time.
Okay, thank you for your answers. I'll share with colleagues after the delegations my concern with what's happening there in relations to our additional costs. So thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Councillor. I see Councillor Eglack. Oh, still on mute, Keith.
Sorry, thank you, Chair, and I apologize if some of this grant has already been covered. I had to step off and do an interview about storm response in my ward. But to the delegate, I didn't hear you at the beginning. I'm assuming you're here on behalf of the property owners along Woodruff, correct?
Yes, just the Manor Forum property owners.
Manor Forum, okay, that's what I thought. Thank you for that. And so what I'm hearing from residents in the area around the process that you've just described is, one of the things they want to know is whether or not they're going to, and maybe you've answered this, and I apologize again if you have. One of the questions that they've asked me is whether there's any intention on the part of your clients to make the units available back to the original tenants once the work has been done, and if so, what rents do they intend to charge for those units?
And so just a point I'll answer that question, but just a point I did fail to state earlier was, back in 2020, my client did undertake to not proceed to issue eviction notices to any of the tenants until the end of COVID. And so that was followed. There were no eviction notices issued to tenants, and those who have left to date have done so voluntarily through the process. In terms of the rents going forward, those are discussions that my clients are having directly with tenants, and every tenant has different factual circumstances that are being considered and discussed. Certainly many of the units will be market rent, but there are many variables that I'm advised are being discussed and considered. I'm not involved in those discussions directly.
So quick comment, first of all, if with the chair's indulgence, putting on my hat as the chair of public health, COVID is not over. COVID is still with us, and we still have to be very, very cautious of that and how we operate. I do agree with you, we're in a bit of a lull right now, but COVID is not over. I guess the answer I was looking for that I haven't heard is, I understand there are variables and what have you, but are your clients actually saying to the tenant, you are allowed to come back? Or are they taking the route that they're not putting that option on the table? That's I agree that I hear what you're saying, that rent may be negotiable, whatever, but for people who've lived there, some people have been there for over 20 years, it's their home. Are they being offered the opportunity, if you will, of first refusal on those properties?
And again, I'm not involved in those discussions directly, but my understanding is that the Residential Tenancy Act is being followed, so people are being offered the opportunity to return, but it would be in accordance with the rents permitted by the legislation.
And do you know, because I'm also hearing that your clients are not negotiating with each and are not speaking to all of the tenants around this. They're speaking to some of the tenants, and some of the tenants they are not speaking to with any kind of options or negotiations. This is what I'm hearing. I don't know if you can comment on that or not.
I can't comment. My understanding is that they remain available to discuss with all of the tenants as they are the owners.
Well, being available and actually initiating the conversations with the tenants is a different thing. So can you clarify that?
I cannot answer that question. However, I'm sure if there are tenants who would like to be, who'd like to have those discussions directly, we can certainly, take those names and what have you and facilitate that connection.
So we should send the names to you then? When you said we'll take these names, should we send them directly to you then?
You may do so, and I'll pass them on to my client.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm just looking at my screen here. I don't see another hand up for this delegation. Would that be correct, Chris? Okay, good. So thank you very much for coming out to speak today. Our next delegation is Peggy Rafter.
Hello?
Hi, Peggy.
I'm sorry.
You don't be sorry. You're no stranger to this place. So I don't have power, so I'm doing this on a phone, so forgive me. You got 5 minutes. The floor is yours, Peggy. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. As you know, I'm Peggy Rafter. I'm an Acorn member and have been a resident of Manor Village for over 30 years. I came to the neighborhood because I was fleeing an abusive relationship with 2 kids, and it was what I could afford. I was quickly welcomed into extremely tight-knit community that I still live in today. The neighborhood really embodies the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. People watch over each other's children. Everyone knows each other. It's just such a sense of safety here. Over the past 30 years, this community has been my life. I've been on the Manordale Woodbell Community Association. I've been a baseball coach. There's just a sense of togetherness in this community. We've welcomed babies, been to funerals. We've had neighborhood potlucks, charity fundraisers, all that and much, much more. I pay $11.33 all-inclusive for a 2-bedroom townhome, which I'll never be able to find again, especially in this community. Why does this need to be destroyed? We know there are other options for the track and the station. Options that would not cause so much unnecessary heartbreak, which we've seen today. So hopefully that will be the end. But I just want to comment on our counselor, Mr. Aglai. He's backed us up through this and never has Smart Living Forum offered any kind of benefit package or anything to I or another tenant here because we're Acorn members. I still have a tree sitting on top of my house when all the other trees have been removed, except for mine. So no, Smart Living is not upfront with their tenants. So it's a battle and it'll continue. But we have on tape from a Smart Living employee that they will never let us back into these units. And they'd rather pay the fine than let us back. So, I mean, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But I want to thank you for listening to me and hope we can have some kind of resolution. Thank you.
Great, Peggy. Don't leave us yet. Councillor Eglai has questions and Councillor Fleury next. So Councillor Eglai.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, don't run away just yet, Peggy.
I won't.
First of all, thank you for the very kind words. Your community you in particular, I almost like as an ambassador for the community, have made your case very eloquently to me and to city staff, frankly, and that's where this report comes from. So I did want to take that opportunity, or this opportunity, to thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
You answered the question I was going to ask you as to whether or not you had been approached by anybody on behalf of your landlord, or if you knew of anybody else who hadn't been approached on behalf of the landlord to try and work out some sort of an arrangement, whether that's an offer to be relocated, move back in, or a relocation package of some sort. So I just wanted that to be on the record, but you're way ahead of me, as you often are, Peggy, in getting that out for the committee's consideration. I'll be talking more about the report and what city staff did, but I think with your help and the help of your neighbors, we got to a good place from the city design for this. And
yes, we did.
We have another issue to talk about and deal with, and that's the smart living situation. But I think the city has done the right thing in coming up with this design. So I'm gonna speak to some of that a little bit later, and I'm gonna let my colleague Matt Forty, I think he may have a question or two.
Thank you.
Councillor Fleury.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Aglai, and good morning, Peggy. I'm interested. So there's the spirit in me that says, hey, the Manor Village tenants really worked hard, and this is the report that's in front of us, and it's worthwhile. There's the other side of me that says, holy geez, this app, now the property owner is seeing it as the potential by its proximity to LRT. So in the end, I'm not sure that the current tenants who were fighting to keep their homes, you're sort of in two battles. There's the battle on the LRT lands, and then there's the battle with the property owner. And I wonder, and I'm trying to be as neutral and as I can in this, but you're a resident there today, and it's you're living through the challenges. Is the city doing the right thing to spend $30 to $40 extra million for this, knowing that smart living is evicting folks? I guess that it comes down to me in that question. Like, I think like if we have $35 million that we can save, we can build new homes for the same amount of residents nearby, I'm sure. So, I'm asking you a very honest question because it will influence how I vote on this report. To me,
absolutely.
To me, realigning for the protection of tenants, but then seeing a property owner taking advantage of that, I struggle with that. So I'd love for you to give me your perspective on this matter.
Thank you. I agree, but saving, this is just Manor Village that it's being done to. The other side is Cheryl Gardens. There's 100 and some tenants there also. So I feel that we worked to have this done. They're going to be safe. We may lose, but they're going to be safe. There's not going to be another 200-300 people homeless. So I feel we did the right thing, and it's the first battle down. We still got the second one to go, but we'll keep fighting. But I don't want to see anybody else in the predicament that we're in. And I know on the other side of the road, there's many children because they have 4 or 5 bedroom units. So I don't want to see what's happening to us happen to them.
Thank you for that. And that's, I'll be looking on a local councillor for some feedback on that. Who is the property owner at Cheryl Gardens?
It is Area Properties.
And if they're not going through the renovictions model?
Absolutely not. He said none of his tenants would be renovicted.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being so candid. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy, for coming up.
Thank you.
I'm looking, I don't see any further hands up, and I'm going back just to confirm, Chris, the final 2 delegations are unable to attend today. Would that be the end of our delegation list? Would that be correct?
Chair, that is correct.
Okay, wonderful. So at this point, I'll allow for questions to staff. Vice Chair Leeper.
Thank you very much, Chair. One of the first considerations that I see in the change in alignment is the potential for an increase in noise because we're introducing curves. And I think Councillor Fleury put it best. We have the opportunity, if we are the owner of that property, to do right by the residents. And the change in alignment would appear to create more noise issues for a higher cost. How much more noise is the change in alignment going to create?
So chairs, before Frank answers the technical issue on the noise alignment, I want to take committee back to a higher level because there's some fundamental premise to the councilor's question that I want to get at first. First of all, without any proactive real estate acquisition funding, we have no idea when the city is actually in a position to acquire the land under the original alignment. That could be next year if the stars align. It could be 10 years from now. So bear in mind, committee, that funding for a property acquisition for LRT is not funded by senior levels of government. It is a city expense only. It is not eligible for funding. So we're talking about a hypothetical here about the city potentially ever being in an ownership position. And staff did do what council asked us to do, is go back and look at mitigating the effects to tenants. And I appreciate that last delegation reflecting the fact that there are two separate properties affected here, not just one. So I'm going to ask Frank to answer the very specific technical issue, but I felt I needed to kind of set the bigger context before that was answered. So Frank, if you would, please.
Yes, we know that the alignment is not ideal, but we have introduced much gentler and longer curved radii, horizontal radii, that will address most of the noise and maintenance issues for this project. So although it's not ideal, it's a lot better than what we were looking at for a median option back in 2020. And we've talked to the LRT staff, and they're comfortable with the alignment we are proposing.
Can you quantify the delta in noise from the previously approved to this alignment?
No, I cannot.
Okay, I think others have questions. Thank you.
Great, and thank you. I'm just looking at the board here. I got to Councillor Menard, Councillor Eglai, and I believe Councillor Beans is joining us by phone. So we'll go to Councillor Menard.
Okay, very quickly, thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for this report. I'm glad we're back at this stage, and that Councillor Eglai, Councillor McKinney worked with staff to get us back to, I think, a better point than we were previously. As you all remember, we had the vote on this, I think, probably prematurely, right? Given where we're back now, and we had talked about that then, and I'm just glad we're back here. So we'll try to keep it positive about being back at this space. I do want to just touch on the alignment. So the developable, is the Knoxdale station land developable as well? The current cleared space, open space there that exists, would that, if the LRT was not, station was not there, would that be developable land in the city?
Since that's a planning question, Chair, I'll take that one. Theoretically, yes, it is it's land that the city actually already owns where the station would be, but the city has held this land for the purpose of transit expansions for many, many years.
Okay, I'm just looking at the alignment. I guess wouldn't make sense to go back and potentially further align on Woodruff for a larger stretch. Is the reason why we wouldn't do that just, is it a cost consideration, given that there's potential developable land, further on Woodruff that we'd be impeding, or what is it? What's the consideration for not putting more of this line on Woodruff directly?
Chair, I'll take a first crack, but Frank will definitely have more to say about this. There's a lot of geometry involved in where we have to be in terms of the grade and the alignment to go underneath the rail line. So we need to be in that location close to the current station alignment to go underneath the existing rail line. And then it's only after we pass through and make an appropriate radius of a turn so that it is a gentle enough turn not to create other technical issues that we can get back into the roadway alignment. So I think what the team has done here is done a very good job of getting us the most use the existing right of way where we can, but there are significant geometry limitations, both horizontal and vertical. And Frank, do you want to correct me or add to that?
Oh, actually, Steve, I'll answer. So, Councillor, the corridor from Baseline Station has been protected for a future rapid transit facility on the west side of Woodruff, all the way through to the Nepean Sportsplex, and then the corridor veers off, and that's the current Southwest Transitway corridor. So this is only the pinch point area that we're talking about. So to shift it so more of it is into the median, then yeah, there will be more cost to the project because of the complications of utilities in the corridor further north as well, and the traffic implications.
Okay, thank you for that. And to just advocate, I know Councillor Egler will do this, but in terms of the current residents there, our new official plan is setting out anyway to try to reduce the displacement that we would see in situations like these. So I hope that the city is able to advocate based on what we put in our new official plan for residents in this situation. Where there's kind of a mass displacement that looks like would be occurring despite saving that route or realigning that route and doing what's right, I think, in this situation. So is staff engaged in those conversations with the property owner at this time, or is it being left to provincial bodies to arbitrate?
So Chair, certainly there was a working group that involves staff, both planning, real estate, community social services, housing branch, and others that have been involved throughout this entire process. There's only so much the city can do when this is provincially regulated function. The city cannot step in and override a decision-making process that the province has held for itself, which is the relationship between the landlord and the tenant in this situation. We've certainly worked closely with Councillor Egli and tried to work through anything that's within our ability and provide information and assistance to tenants about other options, such as getting on the affordable housing waiting list if they're eligible. We've made all of that information available, but at the end of the day, the city cannot intrude into an area of provincial jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. I will be interested in how the new official plan can be utilized to help in these situations, given the language we did discuss as part of that update. I hope that there's more that we can do in the future to assist in this, in terms of whether it be memorandums of understanding or other processes within the official plan that would help us achieve less displacement when things like this, when Herringate come up. That's what we were endeavoring to do as part of those discussions in the official plan. So I hope we can, as much as possible, use authority that we do have to either work with the province or within the city limits itself to, just to stop that displacement.
So Chair, if I can just respond really quickly, I know this is intensely frustrating for everybody involved. The problem here is that we don't have a development application in front of us, and all of the new official plan tools are dealing with when we have a development application. This is an owner who is renovating an existing building and not changing a land use and not triggering any land use planning approvals by the city. The councillor is quite right, and we're very, very mindful, and that's the new approach in terms of infrastructure planning, that when we would design something new, the new official plan sets a higher bar for us to try to avoid this. But in this particular situation, the new official plan doesn't give us the tool because it is at this space that's outside of a planning application at this point in time.
Great, thank you for that clarity. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chair.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Egli and Councillor Fleury, then Councillor Deans is joining us by phone. Councillor Egli.
Councillor Tierney, or Chair Tierney, if it'd be okay, I'm sort of wanted to kind of clean
Wrap
up
up?
at the end, wrap up.
Sure.
So if
You
I'll
can
yield to
back
my
me
other
up.
colleagues and come back on.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Keith. We'll go to Councillor Fleury.
I had hoped that my colleague would have said, because I was looking for additional context for my question. So can I reserve the right to come back on, Keith and Chair, if just to clarify a couple of points?
Well, if the chair's fine with it, I mean, I'm happy to answer questions as the ward council, and I'm sure Steve Wills and his team are happy to answer any questions that might feed into what you want to say.
Yeah, I'd like that. Let's do that. So I guess to me, as the local councillor, I'm interested. I almost feel like we got played by Smart Living here. And I wonder, I know, you have the current residents' interest at hand. And if those, if many of those are being rent-evicted, then we need to deal with that. I wonder why we don't just play our hands and just keep going towards expropriation of the property. Those tenants are being expropriated anyways. So I wonder, as a local councillor, or Steve, if you want to jump in, why would we, like, what's the urgency of today's report? Why not just proceed with the previous directions that were given?
So, Chair, if I can.
If I can start, Steve, quickly, and then I'll let you handle the technical piece. But I think we heard very clearly, I mean, you cannot get a better spokesperson for that community than Peggy. Peggy has lived there for almost 30 years. If that community has a mayor, it's Peggy. She knows that community intimately. She knows what their concerns are. She knows what their needs are. And I thought she spoke so eloquently. We can't forget that there's all these other units owned by somebody else who's shown no indication that they're going to do anything like what Smart Living is doing. And they will benefit from this as well. And as Peggy said, she's going down swinging. Like, yes, she got served with the notice, but as far as I know, they're going to be in front of the board and they're going to be making the argument that they should get their homes back. Even if they're renovated, that they should be allowed to go back into those homes. So this isn't over, Councillor Fleury. And again, my community group was made up of residents, was made up of representatives of the community association. They members of Acorn. They all know what's at risk. They all know what's on the line in this regard, and they were all supportive of it, as was our housing liaison, who unfortunately isn't here today, Councillor McKenney. All in favor of taking this route forward. It is awkward and it could potentially unfortunate, but it's what the community wants. It's perhaps, as Councillor Menard said, something we should have done in the first place, but it is what the community wants, and it will save a huge number of residents. The other piece, and this as being the chair of OCH, it's not as simple as saying, we'll just build more homes for you. New homes could be built, but we have lists, we have priority systems. Doesn't necessarily mean that these folks wouldn't necessarily get to jump the queue, if you will. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but just the way the system works, the legislation works. So while this is imperfect, I think what I'm hearing as the councillors, this is what the community wants, and that was very clear to me through the working group. And Steve, you can speak to the more technical piece of the concerns the city has around expropriation and that, but that's the community perspective.
Thank you, Councillor. I think you said some of the things I wanted to say. The other part of the technical issues of expropriation. For the city to expropriate, we have to, first of all, cause to expropriate. And we, through an environmental assessment process, which is what's before you right now, we have identified another alternative that avoids the need for expropriation. So the city would be on the hook for the value of land, the additional costs through expropriation, plus likely injurious affection from two property owners, which means that the upper dollar value of this is almost is no ceiling to what the city could end up paying for these properties through this process. So although the staff report does acknowledge that in raw property value, there is a slight advantage of the original cost estimate, less than 1% difference in price, we are at high risk if we proceed with the original plan on the property acquisition costs. And secondly, council has no preemptive, proactive property acquisition budget for the city. We have to have a project to move it forward. And at this point in time, this project is not a funded project. So we have no source of funding.
Yeah, thank you for that, Steve. Councillor Fleury, do you have anything further?
Yes, I have a number of questions, Chair.
Go for it.
So Steve, back to you. So what is the urgency of the report in front of us? Like the previously described approach, as you said, it's an unfunding project. We had an alignment. Why do we need to make a decision on this today? Why not play it out and see the behaviors of the property owner? And if it's all new tenants that come in the next few years, then we have a very different conversation, I think.
The chair is, first of all, we're under council direction to come back. That was a motion. I believe Councillor Menard was the original mover of that motion last year when the EA was approved. We were under direction to come back and find ways to mitigate the impacts on both Manor Village and Sherrill Gardens. And as the delegation pointed out, there is another group that is completely not in the renoviction situation that is affected, and we're mindful of them as well. Secondly, the city is has an outstanding dispute with the property owners over the interim control bylaw that must be resolved. We must finalize the process of the interim control bylaw about what the alignments required. And there's, in a sense, a likely outstanding dispute with the official plan on the alignments. That needs to be resolved. And finally, the city is actively seeking funding for stage 3 right now. And we need to have a pin down what's the alignment, because I believe we're at risk of not getting senior government funding if we don't have an EA approved route, because there are other communities in Ontario that are seeking funding as well for projects, and normally senior governments only fund EA approved routes. So we're just delaying our ability to get the funding from the much needed connections west and south if we put this off for at length. So those are all the reasons why we believe we are acting in council's interests and under council's direction.
Okay, you brought up the renoviction issue, and I believe it was Councillor Egli and I on this report when it was first presented, who more than a year ago brought a renoviction review, legal review. Could you give us a status update of when we can expect that to come and at what committee?
So I believe that report is coming back shortly. I don't have the staff person involved with us off today, but I do believe that we're within a couple of weeks of reporting it, and I'll follow up with an updated note to the committee members on the timing of it once I can get that information.
Okay, I appreciate that. Coming back to Councillor Leeper's question on the technical aspects of the changes. So what assurances do we have, or what reviews have we conducted that this change of alignment doesn't create additional noise or risk? I know, I believe it was Frank who did share, very high level aspects, but I think it's our responsibility as council oversight to address what we know. We know that curves in the LRT route does provide a number of challenges, including noise. So what can you share with us in terms of this alignment and those risk factors?
I can take that question, Chair. So as it was explained in the presentation, the curves are far more gentler than the original. And noise is also dependent on the speed that the train is traveling at. And so in this situation, the train will be approaching a station, so it will be slowing down. So that in itself will help. And the smoother curves also, as was mentioned in the presentation, a nicer ride for the passengers. So we still have more work to do in our study after council approves this. We still have to look at the environmental impacts of this new alignment. And one of the tasks would be to recheck the noise issue. So we will review that as well. And we have run this through, reviewed it with our technical colleagues in the rail office, and they've said that this is feasible. So everything points to this as being a good solution, the new alignment, not the original median. So we'll proceed from there after this report is approved.
And once this report's approved, if there are findings that noise levels or grades or whatever bring new issues, what happens then? Are we reverting back to the current alignment?
We can probably engineer some of the solutions, and if there is anything that's out of the ordinary, out of what we're expecting the outcome to be, of course, we would report back to Transportation Committee and formulate another go-forward plan. But very likely that this would be some of these mitigations or design aspects will be addressed through the design process itself, including the walking distance to the now shifted location of the station.
And final question on this. So with the change in alignment, is if we were to revert back to the other alignment, is there a way to capture, to not capture the Cheryl Gardens community, or is that, if one of the communities is being fully renovated, then it's a very different conversation, but the Cheryl Garden stable family environment seems important. So could you give us a bit of an insight? I don't know if you can go back to your presentation and share where in the alignment that community is, so that we can see if it's feasible.
No, I don't think it will be, because of the curves that are introduced here. It's not just the horizontal, but there are a whole bunch of factors that go into the design. So we would not be able to use the original EA alignment and then all of a sudden switch over to the median to avoid Cheryl Gardens, and switching back in very, very short distance back to the alignment on the west side, south of West Hunt Club. So it would be an extremely uncomfortable ride, and you're introducing very sharp curves and definitely more noise. So I would say that's not possible.
Right. Okay. I'll support the report today. I will take it away with to just have a further conversation with my colleague on this. I do reserve the right to flip my vote at council on this matter. I do think it's something. It's difficult to see that the city is doing the right thing, but we have a property owner who made a move here and creating a renoviction environment, which is making this very awkward for me. But I appreciate the work of the staff and the intent of the direction. So I'll be supporting the motion, the report.
Great, thank you. Councillor Deans is coming in by phone. Then bat and cleanup is Councillor Egli.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Diane. Please go ahead.
You're back on mute, Diane. There you go.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Perfect. Thanks, Diane. Go ahead.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. I'm having some technical issues this morning, as you can plainly hear. Thank you, and I'll be brief because my concerns have already been expressed very much along the lines of the concerns expressed by Councillor Fleury. I mean, for me, there's two things here. One, there's the human impact of taking that land, and the other is the additional costs of the recommendations today. And so I understand, I appreciated the words from Peggy this morning. I think she eloquently expressed the concerns of that community. But, just as Councillor Fleury was indicating, it's frustrating if, we take on an additional cost to make sure that those affordable housing units are protected and that people can remain in their homes, and then they're renovicted out of their homes regardless. So that is a bit of a dilemma for all of us, and I think, like everyone else on the committee, I'm sort of leaning toward the staff recommendation on that. But one of the things that I'd like to understand better is there any way to refine the cost estimate? Because for me, it does come down to cost to a certain extent. If the residents of Manor Village are going to be renovicted from their homes anyway, perhaps it would be in our interest to take that additional money and build new affordable units in close proximity, if that was at all possible. So I'm just wondering, we heard in the presentation that it could be a wash because there's unknowns but I wonder if there's a way of refining those numbers.
So Chair, I think Vivian could add to this. I mean, when we get into functional design, there would naturally be a refinement of all of the numbers in all aspects of the engineering design of this process. As I explained earlier, the original alignment had a lot of risks related to the property costs, and that I didn't even discuss the rapid escalation of property prices that are going on right now in the current market. There, as I said before, there's risks of, there's the raw property costs, there's expropriation costs and legal fees above and beyond that. And then there would be injurious affection, which the city would be at risk to being charged for, which we cannot pin down. And it depends on the state of the property at the date of expropriation. And we don't yet know what the date of expropriation is because we have an unfunded project. So this is not a situation where we have an existing project funding envelope, which we could divert money from for another purpose. We don't have a project envelope at all at this stage. It's an unfunded project. And with the city is currently seeking 50-50 funding from both the federal and provincial governments. And that is not certain as of yet. And again, in order to get that funding, we believe we need a locked-in EA in order to get that support. So I understand the council's concerns, but we do believe the new recommendation is lower cost risk to the city, and we would naturally go through a cost refinement exercise in the next stage of engineering.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are all my questions.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Deans. Looking at the board, I just see Councillor Egla's hand up as the final speaker and wrap up. And Councillor, I want to thank you. I know you've been working night and day with your communities on this. You've done yeoman's work and throw in a couple of natural disasters into the mix. I don't know where you're finding time to sleep. And anyway, thank you for the great work. And Keith, the floor is yours.
Well, Tim, you get to a certain age and you'll see that you don't need as much sleep as you used to, right, Eli? So he's nodding. So yeah, no, I really want to thank staff to start with. They really took the direction given on the original vote to heart, and they put in a lot of work. We had people from various departments under Steve Willis's management. We had housing at the table. OCH was often at our meetings. We looked at every option. If it was as simple as simply building some more homes in close proximity and lifting the people out of Manor Village and putting them in those homes, we would be sitting here recommending that. There are so many complications within the legislation, within the processes, within how housing is prioritized, whether people are on lists, not on lists, whether they would qualify, wouldn't qualify to even get on the list in the first place. So I acknowledge that this isn't perfect. And Manor Village, the approach taken by Smart Living has certainly thrown a wrench into things, but again, I can't say it better than Peggy, and I don't have the lived experience of Peggy. This is her home, this is her community, as was many of the people who we consulted as part of the working group. They support this approach, and I don't think anybody sitting around this table could say better what Peggy had to say about the other folks that are owned, the property that's owned by a different corporation, a different landlord, and the positive impact this will have on them. So I would urge you to respect the work done by staff. You asked staff to do work. I'd ask you to respect the position and the input from my community. This is what they want. And again, I acknowledge it's not perfect, but in these days, as Chair pointed out, with disasters and everything else, what is perfect? But this is something that people want. And I want to thank Steve Willis in particular. I think, in his last answer, he really hit the nail on the head. If you're caught up on the whole cost piece here, we really have no idea at the end of the day, because we're so dependent on waiting to hear from the provincial and the federal governments as to what they're going to do. So it's a moving target. I think this is the way to go. It's what the community wants. It's what the staff is recommending. Been a lot of hard work put into this, and And I've spoken to both of the chairs in advance, the chair of transportation, the chair of transit, our housing liaison. These are all the people that are intimately dealing with these issues on a regular basis, and they're all supportive of this approach as well. So, so you've got staff, you've got the community, and you've got the council members that are most intimately involved with this process on a regular basis, all saying, while imperfect, this is the way to go, and this is the way forward. So I don't vote today. I'll certainly be voting at council. I don't vote today, but ask for those who can vote today to please support this.
Well said, Councillor. Thank you very much for your kind words. Seeing no further hands on deck for this particular item. Councillor Fleury.
Sorry, Chair, something came about through these conversations, and I'm simply looking for a clarification. Mr. Willis, is there a planning application for the smart living properties? And if so, can council give directions on ratio of affordable units or some level of negotiation? Sorry, if you could simply clarify.
So, Chair, at this point in time, there is no planning application. The owner of the land is doing renovations on the site under the provisions of the existing zoning, which they're absolutely permitted to do.
Okay.
Great.
Thank
Any
you
further
for
questions?
clarifying.
Great, thank you. So no further hands are up. So on this item, is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you, everybody. And forgive me with the power outages. I just got my power back, so I'm trying to boot things up quickly here. I can't believe it. Thank you, Hydro Ottawa. We'll go back to item number 1. Unfortunately, I skipped over that at the beginning. Item number 1, I believe Councillor Fleury had some questions.
Yeah, sorry again, Chair, and I wish staff were here to present. This is on the Ottawa Hospital item. Is that fair?
You're the one that held it. Yep, that's correct.
No, I'm just want to make sure that that's the item that you're raising at this point. So I am looking to understand 2 aspects. One is, does this form our part of our local share funding for the project? So a few weeks ago, we were talking about local share, and we had extensive conversation with Wendy Stevenson and her team. And I wonder if the work here captures costs that we would include in our local share.
So, Chair, I believe the motion by Councillor Menard addresses the question just raised. So it provides some direction to the city staff to look at it, the feasibility of including it as part of the local share, which staff would support that conversation happening. So I believe that from a process point of view, it's useful to have Councillor Menard's motion, put that on the record as council's position.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with. Is that what was?
There were 2 motions that Councillor.
2 motions by Councillor Menard that will get put up on the screen, and I think it captures what you're looking at here, Matt. Oh, great, thanks, Chris. That's terrific. Councillor Menard, did you want to go ahead and read the motions just so Councillor Fleury's in the know?
Sure, Chair, I could just go through them really quickly. First one is, be it resolved that Transportation Committee approve that the City Chief Financial Officer / Treasurer assess if city funding for the EA and ultimate construction of a weather protected accessible connection from the new Dow's Lake LRT station to the main entrance of the new Civic Hospital can be included as a local contribution amount without a municipal tax levy.
Great, and while we're at it, maybe we'll just do the second one if that's okay, Councillor Menard.
Sure, thank you, Chair. And it's just adding specific names to groups on the public consultation process. Be it resolved that representatives from the Ottawa Disability Coalition, Reimagine Ottawa, Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition, Bike Ottawa, Walkable Ottawa, Ottawa Transit Riders, and local community associations be added as specific participants in the public consultation group and for individual stakeholder meetings. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So Councillor Fleury, were you finished with your questions on that?
No, just a quick follow-up, relating to the item, not relating to the same matter at the beginning. So I'm looking for clarification. We have had extensive conversations with the Ottawa Hospital, as everyone's aware. Under the former general manager of transit, we had discussed looking at a transit station that would be on the south side of Carling, or a review of that. Could we get clarity and status of the impact of today's report, and if those elements are still being considered?
So chairs, I'll answer this quickly, and Vivi may want to add to this. So during the discussion on the hospital site plan, we had extensive conversations about this, that there were technical limitations on the slope trying to get underneath Dow's Lake that prevented the station itself from being moved to the south side of Carling Avenue. But this EA creates the weather protected connection, which council approved, either through an underpass or through an overpass. That's what the EA will determine the best construction methodology. But at the time, it's technically not feasible to put the station itself on the south side of Carling Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarity. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Councillor Fleury. So I'm just looking at the board here. So that item, oh, that's right, we held it for Councillor Fleury. So with the two motions that we have in front of us, just for a little clarity before we go ahead and pass the additional two motions, when it comes to the consultation, it doesn't limit it to staff are going to be able to go out, and it's a public process, correct? Like anyone can take part in that aspect of things. This is just Councillor Menard ensuring that these people are looked at, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
As part of the environmental assessment study, we will be doing a comprehensive consultation process, and the accessibility interest groups, the accessibility advisory committee, even accessibility city staff that I've already been in touch with will be involved.
Okay, terrific. Thanks. So I'm going back and forth between computers here. On the first item about consultations, is that item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Chair, you're on mute if you're chatting.
So the part about the covering component, is that item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
All right, great. And on the base motion itself, is that item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
You really learned how important the big computer is versus these mobile things. All right, so I'll scroll back down. I think it's to the always stop item that Councillor Hubley wanted held. Councillor Hubley?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to follow up with all these changes when they're brought in. Are they going to be coordinated with OC Transpo? Because there will be impacts to bus schedules here. The schedules are designed on 40K streets or 50K. So if we're going to change them all to 30, there will be delays on the bus schedule. So I'm just wondering if the implementation of these new 30K streets, if that can be coordinated with OC Transpo at a schedule change.
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure if OC Transpo is on the line, but we will make sure that they're aware of those. The majority of these streets are on local residential streets, where there isn't transit service, but there are a few where it would, and we'll make sure that if they aren't aware, that they will be aware and make the adjustments as required.
Great, thank you. That's what I want to check on, Chair.
Great. So on item 4 for the stop control, is that item carried?
Carried.
Great. I'm just looking here. My thing's still booting up. Maybe Vice Chair, can you help me out here? Is there item number, is that it? Are we complete?
Chair, as far as I can tell, that's complete. There's no in-camera items, notices of motion, inquiries.
And now it finally boots up. Great. Thank you very much for your assistance today, Vice Chair. So our next meeting will,
are there any inquiries?
No inquiries received, Chris? No.
None, Chair.
Great. Sorry about the messy meeting, everybody. Power outage during the middle of a meeting. Go figure. Shocker. Pardon the pun. Anyway, thank you very much. That concludes today's meeting, and thank you for your participation. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tim.
Good job, Chair.
Trying, man.
You did well.